Welcome to the 18th presentation in our series on action learning. We're very pleased that you are joining us. This presentation is about evaluating action learning programs. I'm Carter McNamara of Authenticity Consulting. We're providing this series to make action learning even more available and more accessible to everyone. This presentation is one in a series and they are best viewed in order, so please be sure to visit the website listed below for more information on the complete series, as well as more information about our company. And so now, let's get started. It's extremely important to do evaluations in programs. Some people are worried that evaluations will somehow be highly scientific and require a lot of time from members. That doesn't have to be the case, and we'll explain why in this presentation. Many people seem to misunderstand evaluations and how to do them, so we'll start the presentation with a description of what evaluation is. Then we'll share the many reasons to do evaluations. There are reasons other than to decide whether certain results were achieved or not. Before sharing guidelines about what to evaluate, we'll talk about the most common tools for doing evaluation and when to use them. We'll share guidelines for doing one of the most important but forgotten evaluations, and that's to verify what the group members are really doing. It might not be action learning at all. Then we'll share guidelines to evaluate the impact of action learning on organizations and the members in them. And then we'll suggest guidelines to evaluate the quality of the overall program, its facilitation, and the action learning groups in them. Before we examine more about evaluation, we should understand the process of evaluation. What is it? The first step in the process is to identify what decision do I need to make, or what question do I need to answer. Evaluations are done in order to make a decision or answer a question. For example, to answer the question, what process is actually being used in the program? Are members even really doing the action learning process that we taught them? Or the question, how can we improve the process in the program? A typical question is, are we getting what we wanted from the program? And a good question is, what other results are we getting? Too often people ignore that. Each of these questions suggests a different focus of evaluation. The next step is to identify what information is needed to answer the question. For example, the different questions on the slide suggest different types of information to get, whether it's information about the actual process being used in the program, or about strengths and weaknesses of the process, or about desired results, or other results we didn't expect. The next step is to identify how that information can best be gathered. What tools should be used? Should we use questionnaires, interviews, case studies, and so on? And the next step is to identify who should use those tools and when. Should the tools be used by a program sponsor, management, facilitators, members? The final step is to decide who the result should be reported to. Which key stakeholders should get that information? Sometimes program planners see evaluation almost as an afterthought, and that's unfortunate because evaluations can be one of the most valuable parts of your program. It's the part that indicates whether all that work to plan and develop a program was even worth it. Benefits of evaluation include that it improves the program. Few people would challenge that assertion, yet too few really build in good evaluations. It gives your program a lot of credibility because it shows that you're very dedicated to continually improving your program. It also enhances your learning. We'll talk soon about how the process of evaluation is very similar to the ways that adults learn. There are certain challenges in evaluating an action learning program. For example, it's sometimes a highly subjective process. And that can be a real challenge for evaluators who focus primarily on quantitative evaluations, that is, on trying to reduce the human experience to numbers. But qualitative evaluations are fast becoming a major approach to evaluations. Rather than focusing primarily on numbers, qualitative evaluations focus, for example, on the stories from people and on the patterns and themes from their experiences. It's also very important not to be intrusive when collecting information during an evaluation. Members of groups often bond very quickly, and they often work together in a highly focused fashion. Meetings are often highly confidential as well, so it's important to do evaluations in a way that collects information but still keeps members comfortable in the process. Also, evaluations can be a challenge because many times the originally desired outcomes tend to change after a bit of coaching. For example, if an organization uses action learning to do strategic planning, the organization might soon learn that it really needs leadership development instead. Otherwise, a strategic plan is not even likely to be implemented. Evaluations are a great way not only to find out what's working and what could be improved, but also to generate more learning for everyone in the program. Sometimes people react negatively to the term evaluation, and so they have uncomfortable feelings about doing them. One way to get past that is to talk to others about evaluations as very useful means to learn about the program and themselves. The process or the cycle in which adults learn is very similar to the process in which evaluations are done. For example, adults have a certain decision or a question to address. They decide what information they need in order to address it. They get that information somehow, they analyze it, and they learn from it. They might even keep repeating the cycle and learning even more. Another guideline is to be sure to establish goals in your program. For example, goals for the program, facilitation, meetings, and individuals. Those goals suggest what success is in the program. Evaluations can't measure success unless success is defined somehow. Yet another guideline is to develop your evaluation plans early in the program, not near the end. So when you're deciding what the goals are, think about how you'll know whether those goals were achieved or not. What indicators or milestones will suggest achievement of those goals? Think about how information will be gathered about those benchmarks. Write your thoughts down on paper and call it an evaluation plan. In your plan, don't shoot for scientific accuracy and validity or reliability, as much as relevance, practicality, and utility. People in your program are already very busy. Don't overload them with hundreds of questions. Instead, ask primarily about the decision that you want to make, or the question that you want to answer from the evaluation. We'll share some examples of questions here in a few minutes. Regarding when a program should do evaluations, they should be done during meetings. Usually they're done as a quick debriefing, they'll call it, near the end of the meeting. Some meetings do them near the end of a coaching session of when a presenter is getting help. Also do an evaluation at the midpoint and shortly after the program. If the program is single project, do an evaluation at the end of the project as well. But never report confidential results. That is, don't report information that members believed would never go outside of their group. In those situations, don't report information that would be traceable back to a particular member. Report general findings such as what processes are working very well or what can be improved. And always follow up with recommendations. Report findings to program sponsors, facilitators, members, and to their management where appropriate. One of the best outcomes from evaluations is the discussions about the results. So leave time after your reports for facilitators and members to react to your findings and to discuss them. There are a variety of ways to collect information in evaluations, including questionnaires, which are usually straightforward, quick, and easy to do. In a couple of minutes, we'll suggest some questions for you to ask for different types of evaluations. You can follow up the questionnaires with interviews and ask questions that are based on the findings from the questionnaires. If the questionnaires indicated that members really want more training in action learning, for example, before doing their groups, then you could do interviews to learn more about how the training could be better. Consider case studies. They're great ways to tell the story of someone in a program. So you could use the questionnaires and the interviews from certain members as a basis for the case studies. Those stories are a wonderful way to show the development that can occur in action learning. And you can learn a lot just by observing people and groups, because observations look at behaviors, which is highly credible information. It's easy to notice and easy to describe. And you can review various records, depending on the focus of your evaluation. For example, whether you're evaluating the program, key roles, facilitation, groups or members, they often produce a great amount of useful documentation that you can review. There are several different times to do evaluations in action learning. So, for example, you could do evaluations at the end of each coaching session. That is, when the group has finished coaching a member. It's common to do that evaluation as a debrief. Members share reflections and comments. Meetings usually end with some form of reflection and evaluation about how well they managed the agenda, ground rules, how well they captured learning. You might do evaluations at the end of a major milestone, for example, in a single project program that is working hard on a particular project. And you might do evaluations at the middle of a program. That information is very useful because it helps you find problems in time to resolve them before the end of the program. And of course, you'd want to do evaluations at the end of a program, including about the quality of the program, key roles, facilitation meetings, and individual results. One of the first kinds of evaluation that a new action learning program should do is an implementation evaluation. It's one of the most important kinds, but usually the most forgotten. That kind of evaluation gets information to find out what participants are actually doing in their groups. That's useful because many times people realize when members get into their groups for the first time, they either forget what they were taught in the workshop or they decide they want to do it differently. If they have a new or unsure facilitator, that can happen. So before you start measuring anything else in action learning, be sure that they're even doing action learning. So that evaluation might ask, for example, are they really doing action learning? Are groups meeting? How often? Are people attending? Are they participating? What are they working on? How are they helping each other? Are they using questions? Are there any early program issues that we should know about? Make sure they're actually doing action learning. In single project programs, it's very important to measure the progress on the project. That can be done, for example, at certain timelines in the project, midpoint of the program, or near the end. When an organization starts an action learning program, it might have established certain desired results that it wants to see during or after the program. An evaluation can measure progress towards that. An organization might also evaluate progress towards certain benchmarks that it wanted to see accomplished for the project. And also, an organization might want to measure progress towards some benchmark or standards for the industry that the organization is in. Organizations sometimes forget to measure unexpected benefits, such as new ways of problem solving or team building, cultivating innovation, or achieving goals. When evaluating the impact on an organization from having participated in action learning, it's useful to have several different stakeholders provide information. That's true whether the program is single project or multi-project. For example, management would provide information, as would the client, sponsor, and those affected by the project. When evaluating organizational impact, you might get information to answer questions such as, what has been the impact in terms of a problem solved or a goal achieved? What change has been noticed in employees? How could the organization have increased the impact even more? And what will the organization do in the future about action learning? You might get information on these questions at midpoint in the program especially, but you're more likely to see these kinds of results near the end. When evaluating a program that is focused especially on individual development, consider questions such as these. How well did the program help me to increase my interpersonal skills, my group skills, my problem-solving skills, my productivity, accomplish more results in my life and my work, accomplish any predetermined goals for individuals in our program? Here's some more sample questions, this time for evaluating the quality of an overall program. How well was the purpose and the goals decided? How well were the evaluation plans designed? How well was the program itself designed in terms of the number of groups, meeting frequency, the length of the program? How well was facilitation itself designed? For example, external versus self-facilitated? And how well was the program marketed, either internally to management or externally to facilitators and members? You might pose these questions at midpoint in the program and certainly at the end too. Let's continue looking at sample questions for evaluating an overall program. How well were facilitators trained? How well were the members trained? How well was program support to ongoing meetings? How well did the program respond to issues? And how well was learning captured by the program? Was there support to spread that learning as well? Now we'll look at some sample questions for evaluating the quality of facilitation. Keep in mind that these questions apply whether the program uses external facilitators or the group self-facilitates. If a group self-facilitates, it's often best to refer to the term facilitation rather than the term facilitator, because self-facilitated groups often rotate those duties. So there really isn't any one person who would be evaluated here. Rather, the evaluation is asking about the nature of the tasks done by all of the members who help to facilitate. Some sample questions are, how well was facilitation to the agenda? Did it cultivate open communications? Did it help members give and receive help? Did it help members to learn? Did it provide a link between the members and resources in the program? Did it help to achieve any program goals, specifically for facilitation? The last set of sample questions is for evaluating the quality of an overall action learning group. So for example, how well was the mix of members? Was there sufficient diversity? How was attendance, participation? How well was the cohesion and the trust amongst members? How well did the group help me overall in the program? How well did the group contribute to self-facilitation? How well did the group achieve any predetermined program goals for the groups? Thank you for viewing this presentation. We hope that you will go on to the next one. You might benefit from the following resources to add even more detail to our overviews of action learning. The website Action Learning Central references an extensive amount of free resources, including about the action learning process, each of its key elements, examples of action learning programs, and tools for each aspect of action learning. There's even an action learning glossary with definitions for each of the common terms in action learning. Our company, Authenticity Consulting, also is available to answer your questions or to help you in any other way. Our firm does very successful action learning groups around the world and for a wide variety of outcomes and applications. There's also the free management library at managementhelp.org. You can find resources and tools for almost any activity in the workplace, including for many of the activities in action learning. You can find more about each of these three resources by going to actionlearningcentral.com/gratis and select the presentation entitled General Resources for Action Learning. Thank you.